Thank you very much for the invitation. It's really a delight to be here. It's actually, I've figured it out that I came once to the Canadian Political Science Association meeting in June, which always meets in June, correct? And it was in Guelph in 1984. I remember distinctly because this was when the Celtics beat the Lakers. You know, that's how I kind of remember sort of my that's how I date things. But before I start my talk, I'd like to really thank David McDonald, who invited me for this event and also contacted me way back for this. And in the meantime, we've discovered that that we have so much in common. And I really look forward to speaking more with him and getting to know him better. And also Margot Irvine, thank you very much, wherever she is, there. I know these things are not always easy to organize and to kind of invite people, and they all have different wishes and desires and leaves and whatever. So thank you, I really very much appreciate it. It's obviously a phenomenal conference, because any conference that has someone like Claudio Magris here as a keynote speaker, well, I rest my case. I mean, he is a legend, I would say, in my book, certainly the most sort of authentic voice of Mitteleuropa that I can think of. He's sort of the last of the Habsburg Europeans. And anyone who could write such amazing work on the river Danube, on which I actually served as a boat professor on the Danube, taking American alumni of Columbia, University of Virginia, UC Berkeley, and Harvard from Vienna down to Istanbul in 1986. It's actually relevant to the talk here. And we went down the Danube, and I was sort of right behind bingo or whatever. I was basically sort of part of entertainment. I gave lectures wherever we passed. And Bratislava, of course, in Vienna, having grown up in Vienna, Bratislava, Budapest. And it was an amazing trip, among others, because it led to this research strain, namely on sports. I had just gotten tenure, and basically what this passion and the academic output on sports is that I have, to the delight but also chagrin of many of my colleagues, been able to parlay my passion into academic research. So when I watch thousands of hours of ESPN and thousands of hours of the Champions League and Serie A, whatever, I'm doing field work. You know, it's primary research. And the primary research on that boat that went down from Vienna to the Danube Delta led to the article that was the precursor to the book that was mentioned offside, which I'm so delighted has become really a mini classic of its own. And that article actually, why the other American exceptionalism, which of course is a pun on Werner Zombart's great question, the famous essay in the early 20th century, why is there no socialism in America? And of course, there was no socialism in Europe either. What he should have asked is, why was there no large-scale, industrially based male working class party in America? But that's long, so it's socialism, okay? And this comparative world has always fascinated me, because it's really ultimately, all this research is actually deeply autobiographical, because it really sort of mirrors my completely bi-continental existence, which is deeply anchored also in the world of sports, and for which the West Germany-Hungary game was a legend. If you want, I can go into that. And it was on the 4th of July, 1954. A major game because it really leads to West Germany's acceptance among the family of nations. Great book by Arthur Heinrich, Tor, Tor, Tor. Die Gründung der Bundesrepublik Deutschland, the foundation of the Federal Republic of Germany, in the Wankdorfstadion zu Bern. It was the first sort of memorable game for me. Listening to it by this amazing, legendary Hungarian broadcaster named Szepesi György. The Hungarians are like the Japanese. It's always last name first, first name after. And when he started crying at the 83rd minute, because the Hungarians, who were the most favored to win the World Cup, actually failed. It not only led to Germany's re-entry, really, in terms of its legitimation, with other things, of course, into a newly constituted, burgeoning Western Europe. But it also, and some people who are a good deal more knowledgeable than I am about Hungarian history, was in many ways the harbinger of what barely 2 years later became the Hungarian Revolution. David made a terrible mistake. He gave me lots of time, so I'm, deviating. This Thursday, a phenomenal new documentary is shown at the University of Michigan on one of the most legendary water polo, or actually sports event of all time, namely that water polo game between the Hungarians and the Soviets 2 weeks in Melbourne, at the Melbourne Olympics, 2 weeks after the Soviet invasion of Hungary. This is an amazing game in which, in fact, the water, we know, turned pretty much pink all over, including deep red in certain spaces. So this was obviously a game that was way beyond the game itself. It was politics, it was liberation, it was anger, it was all of these things. And but the previous 54 game, I remember my father, who of course was a Holocaust battered Jew, and so was my mother, but you would have not known this had you entered the Markovits household and done any kind of research, kind of iconography of the Markovits household in the early 1950s in Timișoara or Temeshvar, or if you want, Temeshburg. Okay? Whichever. I prefer actually Timișoara, but that's a different story. Because in fact, what you looked in terms of the cultural capital, it was all Bach, Beethoven, Schubert, Schumann. The reading, of course, was only Schiller, Goethe, Lessing, Hölderlin, and so on. And my mother, of course, insisted on reading the Iliad and Odyssey to me, not in Hungarian, which we spoke, but in fact in German. I'm not quite sure why in German it's more authentic than Hungarian, but I have some hypotheses about this, okay? Which has a lot to do with the Markovits theory of European relations, which basically goes as such, that you dislike all your neighbors, but those to the east, you actually disdain. Okay? So you really look down on them. And in fact, that's exactly what the Markovits household did. You clearly actually looked down on the Red Army, which was totally responsible that they actually were alive and that I was born. Okay? Nevertheless, they were Eastern. They were clearly inferior. And in this context, my father actually didn't root for anybody. I noticed this. I obviously could not root for West Germany or Germany, but he also wasn't rooting for Hungary. And then he said something at the end of the game, which was unbelievably startling for a barely 5-6-year-old kid.